vote aye on the electronic voting board.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Let me just start by saying that we have two committees that are going on that's going to have to, we're going to have to share committee members for, so you'll see a lot of people going in and out and a lot of proxies being left. But we want to try to get this meeting going as soon as possible. And I know Senator Cosgrove has a bill, and he's got to be next door on the Labor and Commerce Committee, so we're going to take his bill up first, try to get him heard and out of the way so that he can go next door.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There's peace in the valley for yours.
I believe so, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 128. Hello. Senate Bill 128 actually will allow.
Have a substitute?
There is a substitute, yes, sir.
All right.
I move the substitute.
There's been a motion and a second on the substitute. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this bill will do as substituted, it will allow TNC partners to actually have an illuminated display not to exceed 5 candle power or exceed 20 inches and utilize, it would not allow utilizing red, blue, or amber lights. This is for like Lyft and Uber and those type of vehicles. It would have a very small display in the front. When you call for your Lyft ride or your Uber ride or any other ride, basically, especially if you're a large group, a convention or something like that, there's a lot of confusion as to what is and what is not a TNC. This would just help identifying the vehicles that are coming up so that people that called the rides can get the rides. And Patrick Cushing is here to speak to the bill. I believe he's worked very closely with state police and everybody else.
All right. All right. Patrick.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. Patrick Cushing with Williams Mullen on behalf of Lyft. We've worked very hard with state police and public safety to make sure that there are protections in place, primarily to make sure that we don't have rogue devices and that state police has something that they can enforce. And we are going to be filing, and this is in the bill recommended by state police, filing some documents to outline what the device is, what colors are being used, to make sure that state police has something on hand to use for enforcement purposes. And I just want to thank state police for working with us on this, our patron, and of course you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate all your input.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Deeds.
Patrick, this just is discretionary. It's not mandatory legislation. And Uber's all right with it as well as Lyft?
They have chosen not to be engaged on this, so I can't say anything
Okay.
for them. Yeah, but I represent Lyft.
All right. Any other questions from the committee? Senator Edwards.
Does this require that when they're no longer looking for a passenger, they have to turn it off?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Edwards, what the bill allows for is a default color while the app is on. So this device has to be used while the app is on, and that would be that waiting period while somebody is waiting for a ride.
Mr. Chairman, well,
Senator Edwards.
does that mean when they're no longer, they're going home or doing something else, they're supposed to cut it off?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions of the patron or Mr. Cushing? Hearing none. Is there a motion on the bill? It's been a motion and a second to report the bill. All in favor vote aye on electronic voting board.
Mr. Chairman, would you vote me aye, please? Thank you.
12 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill reports 12-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have 3 bills here. This committee has a policy of a 450 requirement of applications for special license plates. We have Senator Locke's bill 116, Senator Wexton's bill 431, Senator Stewart's bill 988. These are license plate bills that don't quite have the 450, and we're going to carry those over until the 2019 session for them to be able to get the 450 signatures. And I know that Senator DeSteffe has some interest in the American Legion. I know the House may have exceptions. We've not ever made exceptions unless they are a organization that doesn't have a lot of living members left. And I know that Senator DeSteffe has been working, I think, with the American Legion, trying to get to that number, but if you'd like to speak.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I was actually in the Veterans Caucus this morning and misspoke. So I thought we had passed this bill last week, and I wanted to correct that this morning, and I'll correct it next Wednesday morning that I actually misspoke. When I read this about 1:30 this morning, I saw the number difference, and I just, for whatever reason, it didn't sink in at 8 o'clock this morning. So I misspoke in that meeting, and I will make sure I correct myself next Wednesday morning in the Veterans Caucus meeting as well. So I apologize for that, but I did want to make sure I pointed that out.
And nothing prohibits us from looking at this next year. I think they're right now maybe at 200 or 250, so they're halfway or a little over halfway there. But in the past, we've just tried to get the 450 mark to make these revenue neutral, and we're going to ask for a motion to carry these over until 2019. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second to carry over Senate Bill 116, 431, and 988. All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
Thirteen ayes, 0 nays.
All right, those have been carried over till 2019 for the proper applications. Next is Senate Bill 530, which is Senator Mason's bill. The patron has asked that we strike Senate Bill 530. Is there a motion and a second to that? All in favor vote aye on the electronic voting board. Okay.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
Next will be Senator Newman's bill, Senate Bill 495. At the request of the patron, strike the bill. Is there a motion and a second on that?
So moved. That would be 9:45.
945, I'm sorry.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second to strike Senate Bill 945. All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
Next is Senator Wagner's Senate Bill 852. There's been a request by Senator Wagner to strike Senate Bill 852. Is there a second? All in favor, vote aye on the electronic voting board.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
All right. Next in the is Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two bills before you today that are here because there's a truck stop in Dinwiddie County that is very interested in possibly adding a motel to that operation. When they got into it, there seemed to be a couple of things that needed to be adjusted. First is Senate Bill 925, and the current state law says that the sign can't be more than 250 feet from the center of the property. Nobody's quite sure why that number was in there, but that would this bill would take out the portion that about the 250 and only say that it has to be within 50 feet of the edge of the property. So you have two amendments to that I think Christie has ready.
All right. Can you report that amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On line 3, introduced in the title after advertisements, strike the remainder of line 3 and through stops on line 4. The second is on line 43, introduced after activity, strike the remainder of line 43, all of lines 44 and 45, and through lot on line 46. And the third is on line 106, introduced, strike all of lines 106 and 107.
All right, is there a motion on those amendments? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right.
Mr. Chairman, I
Bills
think
before us as amended.
That's puts it in the proper position. I think VDOT is happy with that, and
Okay. Senator Deeds.
And tell me what, it looks like we've stricken all the italicized language, all the new language, is that right?
yeah.
What's the bill do then?
We don't know why G got in there,
Okay.
the last part. The important part was the language about where the signs were located. And I think VDOT's, when they had talked to VDOT, I believe that they believed the federal law still had the 250 if it ever was in there, but it does not, it's no longer in the federal law.
Right. Yeah, if you want to clarify that, Christie, as far as what the federal law.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think Joanne from VDOT might be able to address the federal law more specifically. But what the bill now does is that it strikes everything after, on line 43, after 50 feet from the advertised activity. So we're getting rid of the language that said, and no such sign shall be located more than 250
Okay.
feet from the center of the advertised activity.
Okay.
Gotcha.
All right. You need Joanne for any federal clarification? All right. Any other questions? All right. Anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone? Eric? Okay. Anyone in the audience like to speak in opposition? It's been a motion of, to report and a second. All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill reports 13-0. Next bill, 905.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 905, there is some concern or issue that the federal government may change how they perceive activities at rest stops. Currently, there's a moratorium, I guess, that's been on for a number of years. The purpose of this bill is to make sure that if that happens, then any proposal about rest stops would be made by policy decision made by the General Assembly, not by VDOT. There are a couple of amendments that need to be added to this.
All right. Christie, you want to report those amendments?
Thank you. On line 46, introduced, strike all of lines 46 and 47, and insert 2, that the provisions of this act shall not apply to or prohibit any program or contract between a private entity and an agency or political subdivision of the Commonwealth authorized pursuant to federal law, regulation, or policy as of July 1st, 2018.
All right. Is there a motion on that amendment? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. All right. Anyone on the committee have any questions of the patron?
Let me point out, if I could, Mr. Chairman, that satisfies VDOT's concern about the blind that gets the profit from the vending machines at those rest stops now, that no current activity would be affected by this.
Okay. Senator Sudeline.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question about the bill. I'm trying to understand it. I remember learning a lot more about this subject than I ever thought I would a few years ago when the Kane administration closed down the rest areas, and a lot of folks reached out to us and asked why we didn't have commercialized rest stations like they had in so many other states. And then we found out about the federal law that prohibited that going back decades, and that those states were just grandfathered in. So looking at this, I'm not sure I understand, because there's not much in the actual text about no one being allowed to operate a commercial rest area unless we authorize it going forward. But currently, the federal law was that way. So I'm just trying to understand this and what exactly we're doing and why.
The proponents of this are considering an addition that would be about $25 million. They want some assurance that the rug is not going to be pulled out from under them. If the federal law, and there is a rumor the federal law may change, it will or will not, we don't know. But if it does change, we want that decision on that policy to be dealt with by this committee and this General Assembly, not by the folks at VDOT.
Follow-up question?
Senator Sudeline.
So if this were not in effect, and if this bill didn't pass, and the federal law were to change, which I think the last time there was serious discussion of it was during the Bush administration, and I think they pushed for it, but they couldn't get it through even the Republican-controlled Congress. So if the federal law were to be changed, this would then preempt the commercial rest areas from happening in Virginia.
No, the General Assembly could change that, but it would, and I think VDOT agrees, but VDOT changes from administration to administration.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Deeds.
We got to finish the answer. And so I think they agree that the best policy of this magnitude should be done by the General Assembly, not by whichever administration is in.
I think simply what this bill does is give the General Assembly the authority to recognize what they're going to do instead of VDOT if the federal law changes.
Correct.
Senator Deeds.
Mr. Chair, that's just the point I was going to make. In a lot of these rural areas, economic development occurs with truck stops, and sometimes the only area you've got are around these rest areas. And this just gives the General Assembly the power to control that. I think it's a good bill, and I move to report.
All right, there's a motion to report. Is there a second? Motion to report in a second as amended. All in favor of reporting Senate Bill 905, vote aye on electronic voting board.
it. 12 ayes, 1 nay.
Bill reports 12-1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. Appreciate it.
All right. If you'll notice on your calendar, we have House bills that have been sent over. House Bill 125, I think Senator Tyler's here to speak on behalf of Delegate Tyler is here to speak on behalf of Delegate Austin on a bill that came out of the House 99-0, adding rough sawed green lumber to the section of the bill that defines forestry products.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Yes, I'm here as the chief co-patron to House Bill 125, along with Delegate Austin, who's away due to medical reasons. And simply, House Bill 125 simply amends the overweight forest product hauling permit to include rough sawn green lumber, along with the raw logs and the residual wood. This piece of legislation was at the request of the Virginia Forest Products, Virginia Loggers Association, and the Virginia Forestry Association, and it did pass the House 99-0.
All right. Any questions of the patron? It's been a motion and properly seconded that we report House Bill 125. All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
Thirteen ayes, 0 nays.
Bill reports 13-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
While we're on House bills, House Bill 1159, Delegate Brewer has asked that bill go by for the week, and without objection, we're going to take House Bill 1159 by for the week. Senate Bill or House Bill 761, Delegate Landis' bill, is the identical bill that Senator Hanger had, Senate Bill 446, which passed this committee, and it's dealing with the birthplace of the FFA. There's been a motion and a second that we report House Bill 761. All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill reports on the House Bill 761, 13-0. Next is House Bill 776. This is also Delegate Landis's bill. This is the regulation of parking on secondary highways in Albemarle County, which is identical to yours. Senate Bill 679. There's a motion and a second that we report House Bill 776. All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
Next is House Bill 1007. This is Delegate Byron's bill. This is identical to Senator Newman's bill, Senate Bill 363, in which names a portion of the highway, I think it's 460, after Delegate Lacey Putney, the Delegate Lacey Putney Memorial Highway. Is there a motion on the bill?
Move to report.
There's a motion and a second that we report. It's US 221, I'm sorry. House Bill 1007. All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
Thirteen ayes, 0 nays.
13 ayes, 0 nays. Bill is reported. The last House bill we have is House Bill 627. That's Delegate Marshall's bill. It is identical to Senate Bill 873, and this was dealing with the special order vehicles. Delegate Marshall asked for an amendment, a simple amendment after valid, to add Virginia to it. If we could adopt that amendment, if Chrissy, if you want to report that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On line 21 of the engrossed, after valid, insert Virginia.
Is there a motion on that? There's a motion and a second that we adopt the amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. All right, all opposed? All right, that amendment's been agreed to. Now we have the bill in the form in which it exempts these special order, special sale vehicles, the Pimp My Ride bill for Southern Virginia. It's been a motion. Is there a second? All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board. And by the way, Chrissy named it, not me.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
Mr. Chairman?
All right.
Mr. Chairman? In the spirit of keeping the train moving here, I'd like to strike 2 bills. We could do that in a block.
I was waiting on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Which one you want to do first?
Senate Bill 640.
Senate Bill 640, Patron makes a motion and we strike. Is there a second? All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
Thirteen ayes, 0 nays.
All right. Senate Bill 889.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And also move to strike Senate Bill 889.
There's a motion to strike Senate Bill 889 by the patron. Is there a second? All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
13 ayes, 0 nays.
All right, that bill is stricken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does that make me a member of the week?
You are my favorite member today. Senator Deeds, you have a bill dealing with speed monitoring system.
Talk to it from here.
Absolutely. You got some
Mr. Reynolds
witnesses.
from Charlottesville is in the room and can speak specifically to the technology. This bill is supported, it's requested by the city of Charlottesville. It's also supported by the city of Richmond. And what it would do basically is give localities the ability to, is there a substitute?
Yes, there's a
Okay,
substitute.
I apologize.
Is there a
I move the
motion on the substitute?
Yeah, I move it.
There's a motion and a second on the substitute. All in favor say aye. All opposed? All right.
This is Bill
substitute's enforced.
678. You'll recall that I introduced this last year, and the commission, or Senate, the committee sent the bill to the commission on transportation accountability, I think, and the commission looked at this bill, but not until right before the beginning of the session, didn't take a vote on it. What the bill is designed to do is give localities the ability to, by ordinance, pass a legislation to allow within the locality a speed, basically speed monitoring equipment that would not be manned, but would allow for, I guess, speeders to be caught on a more efficient basis. The problem is that we just don't have the manpower to, Mr. Chairman, as you know, the laws we write are only as good as the enforcement we put on the highways to make sure the laws work. And a lot of these older cities, we just don't have the manpower to enforce the law. And a lot of these older neighborhoods, they're quite hazardous situations. And I think that's the genesis for the legislation. Mr. Paul Reynolds is here, who can address the technology and what's going on in Charlottesville.
Right. Senator DeStef.
Would Senator Deeds mind explaining the substitute, because this seems like a substantial change, and I'm just starting to read through it here, trying to find the changes.
Okay, well, I'm afraid that I don't, maybe staff can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senator DeStef. The changes are primarily, well, they're all technical, really. They were recommendations from the Attorney General's office. The biggest difference is we fixed a conflict where part of the bill was allowing this technology to be used by all localities, and another place it only specified Charlottesville. So the substitute that you have in front of you would allow localities to adopt an ordinance, all localities to adopt an ordinance to utilize this technology if they so choose.
Does that satisfy changes?
So this basically.
And I guess part of the reason for that, Mr. Chair, was that at one point we thought about just making this special legislation and essentially having a pilot project in Charlottesville. But before this session, City of Richmond also expressed some interest in the same idea, and so we wanted to make sure it was broad enough to include anybody that wanted to adopt this sort of ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Reynolds, I'd like for him to.
So, Mr. Reynolds, if you want to come forward and speak, and as you come forward, just to give the committee some insight, this bill is much different than the bill I had, because this bill actually is cameras mounted on poles that doesn't have the law enforcement officer actually operating the camera, watching the violator, estimating the speeds. This is a camera much like what a red light camera would do when you run a red light, and takes the picture, evaluated by ever who the group is that's evaluating it, and then the summons issued.
And Mr. Chair, you are precisely correct, and part of the problem is that we just don't have enough law enforcement officers on the streets, or that's the issue, one of the issues we're trying to address here.
All right.
Mr. Chair, Senators, each of you should have a copy of a double-sided document I asked to be distributed before the meeting. I'm Paul Reynolds. I'm an emeritus professor of computer science at the University of Virginia. For the last 2 years, I have developed and deployed a video speed tracking system in Charlottesville. I have tracked over 4 million vehicles in 6 residential neighborhoods in Charlottesville. The two-page handout that I've given you itemizes the benefits of automated speed cameras. It discusses shortcomings of traffic calming and routine speed enforcement, and it shows all too common incidences of vehicles traveling at killer speeds. The problem is, what I have found in tracking over 4 million vehicles in Charlottesville in the last 24 months, is that on residential streets in Charlottesville, we are seeing vehicles pass by at 3 to 10 times the the likelihood of killing a pedestrian or bicyclist on impact every 90 to 200 seconds in these half dozen neighborhoods I have studied. The frequency of occurrence of these speeders is just mind-boggling. I have all the evidence if you would ever like to see it. My purpose here today is to support Senator Deeds' bill. The vehicles that are speeding, as I say, I've documented it. I have itemized it in this two-page handout. The attempts to control this in Charlottesville, there have been basically two. Traffic calming. My video evidence documents the failure of all of the attempts that Charlottesville has made at traffic calming, and enforcement. We don't have the staffing on police forces in Charlottesville or in any other urban area in Virginia to do the job that needs to be done. My videos show over and over again a car speeding by, a police car 3 to 10 seconds later pursuing that car at 45 to 65 miles an hour to bring it to a stop in order to issue a ticket. Shortly after those vehicles leave the scene, vehicles are right back to speeding again. I have all the evidence to this. This kind of enforcement is not working. We need consistent, constant enforcement in order to be able to put a stop to what we're seeing on our residential streets. I have seen speeds in excess of 60 miles an hour on my residential street, routinely.
What's the speed limit? I apologize, Mr. Chair. What's the speed limit of your residential?
Oh, 25 miles an hour. It's a 25 mile an hour residential street. All the streets I've studied in Charlottesville are 25 mile an hour residential streets. Every 90 to 200 seconds, a car or SUV or truck going 36 miles an hour or more comes by. Every 90 to 200 seconds.
And this bill only allows the issuance of the civil citation when it's above 10 mile an hour, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And Mr. Chair, on line 366 of the bill, it says that there's the penalty for that shall be no more than $50, and that there aren't any court costs included.
If I may add, Senator, also that there are no penalties, no points on the record or anything like that. It's basically like a parking ticket.
All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Edwards.
Is there a notice to the public, the driving public, that you're in a zone where there's a camera there looking at you and clocking how fast you're going?
As I read Senator Deeds' bill, yes, that is in there.
Okay.
Yes, there would be due warning.
So
people know.
anybody in the neighborhood, anybody driving in the neighborhoods ought to know that you better watch it, otherwise you'll have a civil penalty.
Yes, yes. To conclude here, speed cameras are not new. They've been in use around the globe for over 4 decades. They're in use in 144 communities in the United States. They are working well. All issues of due process have been handled to everybody's satisfaction, including the ACLUs in other states. There are many advantages to these speed cameras. They have judicially enforceable results. They have documented improved safety. You can look at the results in Rockville, Maryland. Drops of 35% and 40% in fatalities and injuries as a result of these speed cameras. It's a better use of police personnel rather than having them sitting on the streets with radar guns that are ineffective based on my documentation. Let them do other things. And it removes officers from potentially dangerous traffic stops, which we know nationally are becoming a greater problem.
So this removes the law enforcement completely because it operates much like, and I don't know if this is borrowed language from the red light, but on behalf of the locality, a private entity that operates the system enters into an agreement with the Department of Motor Vehicle and gets the vehicle owner information regarding the registered owner that's driving in excess of the speed. So it removes law enforcement completely from the...
Except the possibility of law enforcement review before any tickets go out.
Right.
Yes, that certainly could be done.
But, Mr. Chair, if I could, I'd point to language on line 406, the disclosure by the private entity of any information they get would be subject to a $1,000 civil penalty.
Civil violation, yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Senator Edwards.
I see where you send by first-class mail something, an invoice or whatever, and how do you enforce it if somebody doesn't pay?
I'm sorry, sir, I'm not,
Yeah, how-
no, I understood your question. I'm a citizen. I have absolutely no commercial interest in any of this. All of my software is in the public domain.
Well, I mean, who enforces it?
So the enforcement, as I understand it, I would return that to Senator Deeds. Exactly what the enforcement is in this bill.
I think if you look in paragraph G, look in the substitute in paragraph G.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It says, if the summons, somebody actually mailed the summons, and if the summons person fails to appear on the date of return, so where do you appear? In court? Is that what happens? But if you don't return, as set out in the summons that's mailed, the summons shall be executed in the manner set out in 19.2 I guess that's a police officer or sheriff comes and hands you the summons. Is that what happens? The answer is yes. Okay. And then it's enforced by showing up in court. Is that right? If you don't pay it? Is that right? Just a judge, civil judgment in court. I see. So if you don't show up by that date, then a default judgment is entered against you. Which is the party that actually enforces this? The locality? And it's enforced by the normal civil process. All right. Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, Senator Steph.
Chairman, I've got just a couple of basic questions. And I see that in section E, it discusses what happens if it's a rent-a-car, and then you have to go to court, have an affidavit with the court, and then appear in front of the court and testify in open court under oath that you are not the operator. So if it's a loaner car or something like that, you're going to waste a full day in court. I think that this is just very complicated from a standpoint of there's going to be problems from an enforcement standpoint of who is actually driving the vehicle. This addresses rent-a-car companies. It doesn't address like corporate vehicles. It doesn't address leased vehicles. It doesn't address loaner vehicles. Mr. Chairman, I've got some issues with the way this is written. Nothing against the person who wrote it, but the concept. I think that it's going to be very difficult to enforce this without causing undue harm to somebody who wasn't driving the vehicle.
Yeah, it's much like the red light. You can challenge it, but you basically don't face your accuser. In other words, there's nobody there to operate the camera. The camera operates on its own, so you're basically facing the Commonwealth Attorney, I guess, or ever who the prosecutor is.
Mr. Chairman, with the red light camera, at least you have an officer that reviews every single one
Right.
of the pictures taken. Here, you don't even have that ability. You don't have that. So this to me is just going to be very problematic.
Senator Deeds.
Mr. Chair, Senator, I understand what Senator Steph is saying. I guess this is like the red light camera legislation, like that process. It's not the red light camera or the radar gun bill you had last week. I think there's an officer there. There's not an officer here, but this procedure is nothing new. It's already in the code for basically for the red light camera that's already authorized in certain situations.
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask a question of Senator Deeds. Senator Deeds. Mr. Chairman, Senator Deeds, where in here on red light cameras, you have an officer reviewing every single one of the summons before it goes out. So they're watching the video, they're reviewing every single one of those. Where in here is that the case? I don't see it.
Senator Deeds.
Well, I'm not aware of this being different from the existing red light legislation, but it may be. I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, as I understand it, the red light situation, if it's not you, you send in a letter and it says not me, and that's it.
Mr. Chairman.
Is that right? But is that in here?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Let's find
That's
out from
counsel.
council real quick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So
It's in
In
court.
Senator Deed's bill, the certificate that shows a violation, a speed violation, this is on lines 344 and 345, may be sworn to or affirmed by a technician employed or authorized by the speed monitoring system operator. So it does not need to be sworn to by a law enforcement officer.
You're giving the civilian the ability to swear out the warrant. You don't necessarily have to have law enforcement involved.
But Mr. Chairman,
Senator
what
Edwards.
about if you didn't do it in the red light situation? You just send in a letter or something, says not me.
Mr. Chairman, if you look on lines 356 to 362, that outlines the process by which a person could appeal this sort of civil penalty. And the first option for appeal is by filing an affidavit by regular mail to the clerk of the General District Court. So somebody who is found in violation or has been charged with a violation, and charge isn't even the right word because it's a civil penalty, but they can file an affidavit by mail. So that remedy is still available, so that the person would not have to appear in court if they file a sworn affidavit.
Is that affidavit a certified letter, or is that something that you have to swear out before some
Affidavit.
official?
Mr.
Chairman.
Chair, an affidavit probably refers to some sort of notarization, but it
Yes,
says
right.
by regular mail.
Right, so you would have to go have it notarized by some notary sent by certified mail to the clerk. Regular mail, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just make one last point and then make a motion. My last point is on the red light cameras. When you have a violation, before that violation is sent, it is sworn out by a sworn law enforcement officer. So
Right.
a police officer who is a sworn official, and he reviews every one of these before he sends it out. So that's my statement. My motion is to pass this by for the year or indefinitely.
All right, there's a motion to PBI, but there's Senator Peak is in the queue. Senator Peak, do you?
I would like to speak briefly
All right.
before that. And I am sympathetic to the witness's testimony and to what you've seen in your neighborhoods and what you have done to verify that. I am opposed to all of these measures, photo, red lights, guns that our chairman, radar guns that our chairman brought, for anything that an officer's not involved in person with the person he's charging. But I submit to you that this is a serious problem, and Senator Deeds has brought it up on behalf of Charlottesville. That is your remedy. They should respond to you. They have a city council that is very active in all kinds of events. We see it every day, the types of events, national, local, whatever. That is where you should start with this and talk to them until they respond, until they get a sufficient police force to handle this problem.
May I answer this, please?
Sure.
I have.
Then you should vote them out.
This bill.
Then vote them out and get a committee together and vote them out until they enforce the law. Public safety is their number one priority, and that's who you should be talking to, and get somebody and run against them. That's my comment. Thank you.
It's a matter of resources, sir. It's a matter of resources.
Senator Favola.
I'm going to offer a substitute motion, which is to report this bill. We have localities using this technology right now, and as you noticed in the bill, they actually have to explain on the website that where the cameras are located, so people are well aware this is not a gotcha kind of operation. So you heard my motion.
All right, there's a motion, a substitute motion to report. Is there a sec?
I'll second it.
All right,
I'd like to speak to-
Senator Deeds, do you want the last word?
If
Because
I-
Senator McClellan has their,
Senator McClellan.
all right.
Yeah, I'll let him have the last word, but I just want to respond to Senator Peak's comment. It's not really that simple. Speaking on behalf of the city of Richmond, who also is looking at this, is interested in this, you have cities, particularly our first cities in the urban core, who have significant issues and limited resources. We have given our local governments very few tools to raise revenue. And you have, in the city of Richmond, you have schools that are crumbling. You have high concentrations of poverty, you have 100-year-old infrastructure, you have numerous problems competing for small pots of money. And our police chief is forced to decide, am I going to put my officers in Creighton Court to deal with, in the housing projects where we have high concentrations of poverty and high concentration of crime, am I going to put them there? Or am I going to put them on Monument Avenue or Grace Street to get speeders? It's not that he doesn't want to do both. He doesn't have the money to do both. And the city doesn't have the money to meet all of its needs. And we, the General Assembly, haven't given our localities enough tools to raise the revenue to deal with all of these competing resources. At some point, we're going to have to address this and either give them more resources to meet all of the needs, especially in our older urban core, or we're going to have to give them technology to put where they can't afford to put people. And sooner or later, we have to make that decision.
Senator Deeds.
Mr. Chair, I would second what Senator McClellan says. Charlottesville is not nearly as large as Richmond, but will never be able to raise taxes enough to put enough police officers on the street when they have to basically make a choice whether they're working to prevent violent crime or other property crime or police in the streets to keep speeders out of the neighborhoods. I remember back 25 years ago in the House of Delegates, we argued about the red light cameras in the first place, and my concern then was that this was primarily a revenue-generating tool. But I've seen it work in different areas, and I've seen it slow people down, and people watch the lights when they turn. In Charlottesville, this was not generated by city council or by anybody who was trying to generate revenue for the locality. It was generated by people who live in these neighborhoods, who have seen accidents occur, who have seen people get hurt seriously, and understand the very terrible choice that a place like Charlottesville has, whether to put police officers on every street corner to slow traffic down or have them enforce other laws. And the tools that this legislation would give our localities are not anything new. We've been this technology, we've crossed this bridge, and I would certainly hope we would consider giving this technology the benefit, giving our localities the benefit of the doubt in this area.
All right. As you've heard from the patron, and there's a motion to report in a second, just so you know, I've talked to Mr. Johnson, and I have routinely voted against all of those cameras that are not operated. I just don't like removing the officer element from it. That's why I carried the bill that kept the officer element involved in the camera, watching the violation and doing, taking the picture and processing the whole thing through, and you have your accuser standing in court if you challenge it. That was always my gravest concern with red light cameras, toll cameras, and so forth. And I think this is a trend. Once the red light camera came in, the toll camera came in, and now the speed cameras, where we didn't have it with red light or tolls. I wanted to make sure that we had that element in it when we did it with speed. But that being said, there's a motion to report in a second. All those in favor to report, vote aye on electronic voting board.
Six ayes, 7 nays.
All right. Can we reverse the vote, PBI? Okay. All right, the bill fails to report 7-6. All right, Senator Edwards, you have a Commonwealth Transportation Board bill.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 147 has to do with basically I-81. Anybody who's traveled on I-81 knows that when it's moving, it goes pretty well. But unfortunately, anytime there's an accident, or even when VDOT is working on one of the lanes, you're going to slow down. It becomes very unreliable. A couple of years ago, I can't remember even the month was, I was coming back to Richmond and in the morning, and fortunately I left a half hour before I really absolutely needed to be there. And I got close to Lexington and stopped, both lanes. Sign had one of the signs up there that said, both lanes are stopped because there was an accident up ahead. Apparently some truck or somebody caught on fire. And so we finally inched along and got off on 64 going west and then 11 going north. And I finally got back on 81. I lost a good half an hour and because of one accident. This happens a lot. The point is, I-81 has become very unreliable. And right now, in the list of factors to be considered by VDOT and the prioritization process for this program that we now have, Smart Scale, I believe it's called, the reliability is not there. What is there are the following: congestion mitigation, that's important, especially in Northern Virginia. Economic development, we want to have roads to help improve the economy. That's important. Accessibility, that is, you want to go from A to B and get there in a reasonable and in a way that with roads if you need to. Safety, hugely important. And environmental quality, that's very important. What's missing is travel time reliability. Now, I take issue with what some people have been telling me that it's implicitly in there. I've been looking at this and trying to analyze it. I don't see reliability anywhere implicitly and certainly not explicitly. And what we need is reliability on I-81. It's one of the most unreliable interstates in Virginia. Now, travelers want travel time reliability. They want consistency. They want dependability. And they know that they want to know that if the trip is going to take 5 hours, they want to be reliable. It's not going to take 8 hours. Or if you're going to go to Richmond, 3 hours from Roanoke, you don't want to have to all of a sudden realize it's 4 hours, especially when you got to get there. And so reliability in some ways is even more important than some of these other factors, such as congestion. Now, most travelers are less tolerant of unexpected delays because such delays have a larger consequence than drivers who face everyday congestion. With everyday congestion, it's irritating, but you can figure out a way to get around it over time. But travelers tend to remember those few bad days they spend in traffic rather than the average time it takes to go from A to B. So we need to put reliability as part of the process of deciding where to spend our money. I have some people here, Rebecca from the Chamber of Commerce.
So,
this has become a big issue in my region, by the way.
Before we bring them up, I know what you're trying to get to, and I understand it, and I don't disagree with it. But what scares me is what the other regions have the capability of doing if we go tinkering with the smart scale right now. That's my biggest concern.
Such as what?
Well, we see what they have now. They have the votes to change it around. So.
Well, we're just adding something, and I don't
I
think
understand.
we'll do that. All right.
If you're in support of the bill, please come forward.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Rebecca Gunn with the Roanoke Regional Chamber, and I'd like to thank Senator Edwards for bringing this issue up. As you may be aware, transportation and specifically safety and reliability are important improvements that are priorities for our members, especially as our economy continues to develop and evolve in a more regional nature, specifically with the linkage between Blacksburg and Roanoke and all of the ways that those partnerships are redefining our economy. So as Senator Edwards mentioned, reliability is an issue that we have along 81. It's kind of a unique challenge that we have. So when we look at the smart scale process and how we can be the most competitive in garnering funds to support critical investments in our transportation, what we've come to understand is that reliability is the issue that we face, not congestion. So whereas it may take me 45 minutes on any given day to get to Blacksburg, it could take 3 hours if a truck is flipped and it takes significantly longer to clear that accident. What's even more concerning in terms of safety is that there are many miles of 81 that don't have frequent exits or alternative routes for drivers to be able to exit the highway and get to their point in alternative fashion. So for those reasons, we do support the bill and we ask for your consideration. Thank you.
So are you aware of the open chain bill right now that we're working on for I-81 with the administration?
I'm aware.
Okay. Do you support that?
We do not have a position on that bill specifically, but the chamber has in the past supported funding mechanisms to further support our transportation needs. So we're looking at it with our transportation advocacy group to see if it's the route that they're the most supportive of. I know that Senator Hanger has an alternate bill that is being heard today in Finance Subcommittee. So we're watching both of those bills really closely also.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Mindy Carlin, representing the Northern Virginia Transportation Alliance. In concept, we agree that travel time reliability is an important factor really throughout Virginia, we would assert, including in Northern Virginia. Our concern is, if this legislation is to move forward, is to determine how that might be calculated. That's where our concern lies, but in concept, we support including that in some form or fashion. Thank you.
Yeah, just real quick, are you in support? Okay. I got a question for Senator Edwards. The definition adds travel time reliability. How is that not going to apply to Northern Virginia?
Well, it would apply statewide.
That's what.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
what.
Mr. Chairman.
That's what scared me.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Marsden.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, having, written with Delegate Lemunian the original bills that got this whole process started, it was a Northern Virginia thing to create, this kind of metrics. And I believe the Virginia Department of Transportation spent several $1 million putting together a metrics to make all of this kind of work. And I agree with Senator Edwards. This is a very logical kind of thing to consider, but it's not in there right now and would cost a huge amount of money to recalibrate this whole thing to add additional criteria, to examine. I don't know that would give any one jurisdiction particularly an advantage over another, or any highway an advantage over another. But I do know that this is a very, very complex thing that's been put together over time, and we're still trying to make it work and use its evaluations of projects to the best that we can. And I don't know if there's any way that we could, ask, VDOT or the Department of, or the Secretary's office to take a look at what it would take to add to this kind of a factor to the metrics and see what's involved here before we acted on this.
All right. I think, Nick, do you want to speak? This is, anyone else in favor of the bill? All right. Those in opposition?
Hi, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Nick Donahue. I serve as Deputy Secretary of Transportation. First, I want to say that with the comments that Senator Edwards made with regard to I-81, the administration could not agree more. We are actively working and want to find solutions to 81. The issues he raised and that others talked about with long distance, between the various exits. So if there's a crash, you can go past it not knowing there's a backup and get stuck for 2 hours. That is an unpleasant experience that no citizen should experience if we can prevent that. The reason I'm rising today is not because I disagree with what he's saying about I-81. I am in violent agreement with what he's saying about I-81. We put in an infrastructure grant to the federal government to ask for extra money to try and fix I-81. We're currently working with Senator Obenchain and you, Mr. Chairman, on a bill to look at ways to finance some of those improvements on I-81. I'm here today because we are concerned, as you noted, about kind of the Christmas tree effect. There are 5 other bills that are introduced, 2 in this chamber and 3 in the House, that would make unique little changes to the smart scale process that people believe would advantage their area. So Senator Stewart has a bill in here that the Fredericksburg MPO is promoting. Delegate Kilgore has a bill in the House that is, I think, specific to one of his counties down there. Delegate Thomas had a bill in the House related to the Fredericksburg area. And if we just start making changes to the overall statewide process for each individual area, we are concerned about how the effectiveness of this process working on a statewide basis. The other thing that I would say is So there's 6 factors listed in the bill. Each factor has several measures. Reliability is one of the measures we use today for economic development. So in rural areas, we do evaluate the reliability of roadways. However, to Senator Edwards' point, the nationally accepted standards for measuring reliability do not capture the types of issues you see on I-81. It's not that you have a truck crash in the same place all the time or very frequently in the same place. The S-curves at Buchanan kind of being an exception in a few other places. But in general, it's not in the same place. I-81 is a 325-mile long corridor, and people tend to drive longer distances on that than they do in, say, an I-66 or an I-64 in Hampton Roads. And so they see crashes that might be spread out over a 40-mile corridor, but they're driving that 40 miles every day. And so that has a huge impact. The existing measures, I readily admit, do not capture that type of issue well. We worked on this issue at the direction of one of our Commonwealth Transportation Board members, Mr. Fralin, for 4 months in the interim last year. I will admit, Mr. Chairman, we were unsuccessful. That does not mean we are deterred. We are happy and willing to keep working on this. Secretary Valentine has actually already told me within the first week that she wants us to keep working on this because she wants us to try and find a way to capture these things. So we are happy to do that. We are just nervous about the implications of starting to make these changes and what might happen at the end of the day if we start adding things to this bill and what could come out the other end, to be very honest.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience in opposition to the bill? All right, hearing none. Is there a motion on the bill?
Can I have final?
Sure, you
We
can.
put a man on the moon in 7 years from the time President Kennedy said we were going to do it. We built the Transcontinental Railroad in 7 years, the time Lincoln passed the Transcontinental Railroad Act in 1862. VDOT needs to be directed to find a solution to I-81, and this is one solution they need to continue to look at. I move the bill pass.
All right, so there is a motion. I've spent 32 years trying to make that route shorter, but it hasn't worked. All right, there's a motion and a second. Senator Cosgrove.
Unlike privileged election where everybody loved Senator Edwards yesterday, I'm going to move to PBI the bill.
All right, there's a motion and a second to PBI the bill. All in favor of passing by indefinitely, vote aye on electronic voting board. Oh, sorry.
6 ayes, 7 nays.
All right, now there's a motion to report the bill. Is there a second? Yes. There's a motion and a second to report the bill. All in favor, vote aye. Let me just say this. If we report the bill, because there is a financial impact to this, there has to be a motion to go to finance.
So moved.
All right, there's a report and a second to go to finance. Report and refer. All in favor, vote aye on electronic voting board.
3 ayes, 10 nays.
Bill fails to report. 10-3. Senator Chase. Oh, maybe. Yep. Sorry.
It's okay. Well, you keep my prop.
Okay. I think that's yours.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is Senate Bill 917 that has to do with handheld
Do you have a
photos.
substitute?
Yes, I actually do. Thanks for asking.
All right. I'm sorry, there's amendments. Do you have amendments? Chrissy, would you report the amendments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On line 91 of the introduced, after section, insert by mailing a summons. The second is on line 93, introduced after coverage, insert However, if a law enforcement officer uses a handheld photo speed monitoring device to record a violation of 46-878.1 and personally issues a summons at the time of the violation, the conviction that results shall be made a part of the person's driving record and used for insurance purposes in the provision of motor vehicle insurance coverage. The third is on line 94, introduced after issued, strike pursuant to, insert as provided in. The fourth is on line 98, after or, strike renter, insert owner. And on line 105, after owner, strike lessee or renter, and insert or lessee.
Okay, is there a motion on the amendments?
So moved.
And a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right. Senator,
Read the second one again. I think I missed that.
I think that's dealing with the law enforcement officer. If they choose to issue the summons, it's a part of your driving record, because when I hand you a ticket, it becomes a part of your record.
You get points for it.
Yep. All right.
Okay, are you ready? This is basically Senator Carrico's bill, except for school zones.
Yep.
So if you liked his, you'll love mine. The bill is permissive, it's not mandatory. It only allows a locality to pass an ordinance to have law enforcement officers use handheld speed cameras in school crossing zones. In Chesterfield, where I live, I have about 6 different schools on Bailey Bridge Road, and a number of subdivisions pour out into that area. It's pretty crazy. And in fact, there were almost 8,000 speeding violations in school zones last year. The year before, there were over 1,100 crashes in school zones, resulting in 5 deaths. I also want to note that this bill is supported by the Sheriff's Association, the Chiefs Association, and the Virginia Education Association. Let me tell you a couple things that this does and that it doesn't do. First of all, even if they pass the ordinance, it requires them to do this. First of all, they have to post signage warning drivers that a speed camera is in the school zone, conduct a public awareness campaign to let drivers know the cameras will be in use, provide for a maximum of a $50 fine, and no violation will result in a report to DMV or the driver's insurance carrier. And like Senate Bill 509, Senator Carrico's bill, the driver has to be going at least 12 miles an hour over the posted speed limit. I also want to emphasize that this is not a third party that's allowed to do this. Only a sworn law enforcement officer can operate the equipment and make the decision to issue a ticket. So there's no freestanding devices. Speeding in school zones, we already talked about, continues to be a major problem. According to Virginia DMV, and this law simply helps to address that. And I move we pass the bill.
All right. As you understand, Senate Bill 917, it has the officer element to operate in it. It's in a school zone only, and has the option, just like in the bill I had, of the officer being able to pull out if it's egregious. The difference, I guess, between mine and yours is in a work zone, the officer can't pull out unless it's a really egregious fine. School zones, they're operating there all the time.
Correct.
So it's all identical to mine except for that piece.
Yes,
All right. Any questions, the patron?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator
Wexton.
Wexton.
Thank you. I guess, and I'm not sure whether this is something that was addressed in the amendments because they went by very quickly, but can you explain to me why on lines 69 and 70, all of these penalties get paid into the state police rather than whatever the locality is that, where these schools are located?
Simply, well, I can tell you a couple of things. I do have the Virginia Department of State Police, and I've been there. They need help with their IT and everything else. I mean, we can move, if you want to change that to the locality, I mean, I'm certainly open to doing that. But I would say, given the situation we have with the Virginia State Police, this might be, an option as well. I mean, they have their IT systems. I went and visited them, interestingly enough, a couple weeks ago. And they're having issues with VITA and all kinds of problems. They want to try to bring their IT 100% in in-house so that they can respond appropriately to emergency situations. They've had all kinds of personnel issues, which we've tried to correct. So, I mean, I don't even think, I mean, I think the funding source from the Virginia State Police, they've had issues in the past. I mean, it used to be one way, and I wasn't around when all that happened, but it seems like they're always struggling to keep and retain people. So why not? I mean, they service all of Virginia roads, not just the localities, but I mean, I'm open to this for discussion.
Well, and I will further elaborate. It's not like we don't already. When you go get your car inspected, a portion of that goes to the department for operational cost for them to obtain the equipment that they need in order to do it. So there is precedent set that the department does receive money, but it's usually just for operation of equipment, not for personnel.
Mr. Chairman, just following up on that,
So,
I guess what is unlike the chairman's bill that we saw before, where you would have a trooper on an interstate in a work zone enforcing those speeding laws. In the school zones, at least in my part of the world, we'll have a Loudoun County Sheriff's Officer or Town of Leesburg or Town of Purcellville or wherever they happen to be located. And those are the localities that you're asking to pass these ordinances. But the way that you have the money from these civil penalties going, you're creating a disincentive for the locality to have these ordinances, and then B, if you're going to have an officer there running this camera, which is what you anticipate under this statute, then it would have to be a troop. I mean, I don't know what locality is going to have their officer sit on the side of the road and do a bunch of civil penalties for another department, for a completely different department to get the revenue from it.
I'm
So I
open
think-
to an amendment. If you'd like to offer one up, I'm happy to accept.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Morrison.
Thank you. I actually like that feature of the bill because it takes the taint of this being a local revenue project to earn money for the local jurisdiction. The fact that it goes elsewhere, and I'm agnostic as to where it goes, but that it doesn't, then what happens, I think, is this becomes truly a safety project. It's worth doing because of the safety, not just because you're garnering the revenue. State police, works for me, but if you wanted to make it the literary fund or whatever, I'd be fine with that. But I think that's a positive feature of your bill, and because we already have localities in this Commonwealth who are setting up speed traps on interstate highways that go for short periods of time through their jurisdictions to generate revenue, and I think we need to avoid that kind of thing.
Senator DeStef.
Mr. Chairman, I had a quick question. So when the police officer is in the work zone, is he going to cite this section of code, or is he going to cite like the local speeding code? I mean, what specifically are they going to cite? Because I agree with Senator Wexton, where she said that they're going to enforce whatever they get the funding from.
Chrissy, which section do they, under a speed camera, do they?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This, Senator Chase's bill would apply to school crossing zones, and those are defined in 46-873. So the violation that would be charged would be a violation of that speeding in a school crossing zone section, which is 46-873. However, the violation would be issued pursuant to this section, which means it'd be issued as a civil penalty as opposed to a traffic infraction if the police officer had handed the ticket himself or herself.
If the police officer hands the ticket, hands the ticket, it'll be under the state code unless the locality adopts it. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McClellan.
Well, so a follow-up to that and to Senator Wexton's line of questioning. So if a local police officer doesn't use the handheld, just pulls somebody over and gives them a ticket, where does that money go? Does that go to state police or to the local police department that issued the ticket?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that goes to literary fund, doesn't it?
If it's charged under the state code, it'd be literary phone.
Mr. Chairman, could I just make a quick statement? My main goal with this is a mom with 4 kids. I don't care who gets the money. I love all our law enforcement. You can give it to the localities. I just think we need to penalize people who are speeding through these school zones and killing our kids. So whoever you want to give the money to, I think it's all for a worthy cause. We just need to keep this from happening. And so whatever you all decide on, I just want to make sure that our kids are kept safe. And there's a disincentive to speed.
Well, Mr. Chair,
Senator McClellan.
I actually would like to propose an amendment that the civil penalties go to the locality issuing the ticket, and here's why. I just finished telling you that for some of our localities who can't afford to put officers in certain areas to enforce speeding, period, they're certainly not going to do it in a school zone they're not going to adopt this ordinance and do it in a school zone with the handheld camera because if they don't have the money to do it. And so I would be much more inclined to vote for this if we amend line 70 and 71 to say that the civil penalties collected under this section shall be paid to the locality issuing a ticket. If you want to limit that to paying for equipment, I'm fine with that. But otherwise, I don't think this is going to be enforced or implemented in some of our localities and I agree, as I see people speeding down Gray Street right past an elementary school or on Hanover Avenue right in front of my son's school, I agree with you. But unless the money goes to the city of Richmond, they're not going to do it.
I agree, Mr. Chairman. Let's adopt the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, if that's a motion, I second.
It is.
All right, there's a motion and a second that we adopt the amendment that allows the locality to collect the civil fines opposed to the state police. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Mr.
All
Chairman,
right, Senator Edwards.
I have a question. Did I understand you to say this would not go to the insurance companies because you have this $1,000 penalty for disclosing it?
Sorry, which line are you referring to, Senator
I'm looking
Edwards?
at line 133. I thought heard you say it does go to the insurance companies, and I heard you say it doesn't. I misunderstood. I want to clarify. What were you saying?
I apologize. I don't think I said anything about insurance companies. Let's see, it says any person who discloses personal information is, I don't know if I'm looking at the right place.
Subject to a $1,000 civil penalty.
Okay. Any person who discloses personal information and is in violation of the provisions of this subdivision shall be subject to a civil penalty of $1,000 per disclosure.
I think the insurance, I think you're speaking of the driving record. If it's a civil violation, it's not made part of your driving record. If it's a hand-off ticket, it will be and go to the insurance as a
So what's your,
violation.
Mr. Chairman,
Chrissy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The $1,000 penalty would be if someone receives the vehicle information about a vehicle that is, regarding a vehicle that is in violation and speeding in a school safety zone, and then they use that information inappropriately. That person could then be penalized $1,000, and that would be a civil penalty.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Edwards.
so if it's not on your driving record, then the insurance company wouldn't know about it. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, okay.
All right, Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So among my several concerns is when you have the money going to the local police, you've now incentivized for them to be there to submit as many tickets as possible, because what you will see is there will be policemen that when budget times are tough, they will be told that it's necessary that they get the tickets, or otherwise there will be cuts to the department.
Mr.
We
Chairman.
already see it on our interstates, and I have the discussions because I have interstates through my district, and I have deputies that contact me whenever there are considerations of where the funding will go on tickets on our interstate. They tell me, and I think they're right, that if we changed where that money went, that deputy's position would cease to exist. So they understand the way this is operating, and I think that's where we're going. I also would point out that when we had this discussion in December, I thought someone asked a really good question about when you have the delay of 2 weeks possible to send you the ticket by mail. And then when it arrives there, how are you going to defend yourself with that much time passed? You don't have the benefit of you just got pulled over and you know what happened. So I've got several concerns with it. I think this amendment has made it worse.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment to answer Senator Sutherland's question?
Senator Chase.
First of all, I would say they're only going to catch offenders. If you're obeying the law, you're not going to be pulled over and you're not going to be ticketed. So I think the whole purpose of this bill is to create a disincentive for people speeding. If you're speeding, you're going to get caught. That's the whole purpose of the bill, is to de-incentivize people from speeding through school zones. And the fact that it's a fixed area, and the fact that most of these school zones are typically on secondary roads that most people travel on a routine basis, it's going to be negative reinforcement every time you get a ticket. So.
All right. Okay, we have the bill before. Anyone in the audience like to speak to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jay Deck with the Virginia Education Association. The National Transportation Safety Board has done some studies on children hit by motor vehicles, and most of those offenses do occur. There's a majority of offenses that occur in a school zone, and it's mostly children 5 to 7 years old. So therefore, we really do support this bill. I think no matter who gets the money, shouldn't be the consideration. It should be about the safety of our children. And so we support the bill.
Anyone else in the audience like to speak to the bill? Anyone?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Eric Finkbeiner representing American Traffic Solutions, and just wanted to emphasize what Senator Chase already emphasized, that in addition to the VEA, the chiefs and the sheriffs, as well as the city of Charlottesville, has authorized me to say that they are in support of the bill. So,
Right.
And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Anyone else in the audience like to speak in favor? Anyone in the audience like to speak in opposition?
Move to report.
Senator Favola.
Well, I will second the motion. I was going to move to report.
All right.
So I second the motion.
There's a motion and a second to report the bill as amended. All in favor of reporting the bill as amended, vote aye on the electronic voting board. No.
He voted both ways.
Vote yellow.
Just vote yes.
All you. It all comes down to you.
All right, you got it.
All right.
10 ayes, 3 nays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Members of the committee, thank you.
All right, next is Senator Stewart. I'm going to give it to you now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for being so late, but I frankly have been going all over the place trying to figure out which room I was supposed to be in, and I hope I'm finally in the right room.
I think you're here, Senator.
Senate Bill 683.
All right, pay attention, please. Senate Bill 683.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, all this bill does is create a vehicle for funding for VRE. We're not asking for any money. We're just asking to create a vehicle that if we can get some money, we'll have a place to put it, and I'm working on that separately. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have that bill on my dock.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't see it either.
Yeah, it's Senate Bill 207.
No wonder I'm in the wrong place. What is that bill?
You're on finance. 207, it adds a state prioritization. You're monkeying with the
Smart scale.
With the smart scale. No, I don't want to strike it. But I was not aware that was the right bill. Do we have another meeting?
Nope,
This is it?
Senator.
You want to borrow my iPad? I'll pull it up for you. Seriously.
I'll do it. Can you pass it by temporarily? Or just for a minute, is this your last
yeah,
bill?
Yeah, we'll. Are there any other patrons here besides the chairman? Senator Peake.
Having voted on the prevailing side of Senate Bill 917, as I was walking in the door not knowing what I was voting in, I'd ask to reconsider that vote.
All right, there's been a motion to reconsider the vote on 917. Those in favor, please vote aye. Opposed, no. All right, go ahead and close the roll.
12 ayes, 1 nay.
All right, the reconsider bill is before us.
Move report.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to report Senate Bill 917. All those in favor, please vote aye. Opposed, no. He's a no. I'm sorry.
There we go.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Show Newman is no.
Please.
7 ayes, 6 nays.
All right.
8-5.
No, Senator Newman is voting in the negative. It just came up wrong. That was my
Senator
fault.
Newman's a no.
All right, Senator Carrico.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we heard this bill at length. This is 504. This is the program in which it's a federal pilot program in which authorizes the Secretary of Transportation, the Commissioner.
Senator, do you have a substitute for this?
I do.
All
I'm
right.
sorry.
Can we get a motion on the substitute, please?
Move substitute.
We moved in. Moved and seconded, we adopt the substitute. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All right, the substitute is before us. Senator Carrico.
All right, we heard Senate Bill 504 at length last week, and Senator Favola brought up some points that we felt we could address, and Senator McClellan. We had a stakeholders meeting to discuss some of those issues about this pilot program, in which allows the Commissioner of Highways, Secretary of Transportation, and the Governor to be authorized to enroll or withdraw from any federal pilot program or project in the collection of study data. And what the substitute does, it allows them to enroll or withdraw from this pilot program. And the duration of that pilot program can't exceed 15 years. And once they're in, it doesn't prohibit them from coming out. And it shall, once they're enrolled, if any such federal program comes into play, they have to come back. The way the substitute is, they have to come back before the General Assembly before they enroll in it or before they withdraw from it. So it gives the General Assembly the last say if they choose to do so. It also addresses some of the concerns that VDOT had related to the study, such as axle spacing on the 6-axle trucks, reasonable access from loading facilities on the primary highways. We took in the study group all the things that VDOT had some concerns about in order to do the study and place them in the enactment clause. And this bill, as a substitute, is a result of what was discussed in the committee, some of the points raised by Senator McClellan and Senator Favola about the study, and giving the General Assembly final approval. So.
Senator Carrico, just to boil it down, basically right now there would have to be a federal pilot program for us to participate,
Right.
correct?
Yeah.
Right. So it's not something we just do by ourselves.
And this goes away. If the federal government does nothing to put this program in place, within the 15 years, it's gone. So it gives us 15 years to wait on the federal government to do something. And if they do something, then we can enter in or we can withdraw from it, and we'll make that decision. We'll make that decision when it comes time.
Senator Favola, did you want to speak to the bill? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. All right, is there anybody here to speak in support of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ken Hutchison on behalf of Anheuser-Busch. First, on behalf of our entire coalition, we want to thank the committee and the members for their extraordinary patience and the extra week to try and get this right. We understand all the concerns and wanted to try and really spend a little bit more time addressing some of them. Also want to thank VDOT, the state police, and the folks at DMV for participating in this meeting on Monday that Senator Carrico referenced. Lasted for about an hour and a half, and it was very thorough, and we appreciate their involvement. And believe it or not, our side, while we're very passionate about our issue, we're not wed to the belief that all of the ideas contained on our side are encompass all of the things that we need to think about. And I want to commend the folks on the other side for bringing forward an issue that we think made a lot of sense, and that was making sure that the General Assembly had an appropriate opportunity to circle back and review the appropriateness and the parameters of the federal pilot and the decision by VDOT potentially, if a pilot were ever to exist, in the form of the amendment. I'd also note in the enactment language that the points that were added at VDOT's request also include a general point of additional review at their discretion. So items that they are interested in or feel are important as may arise down the line are included. You've been bombarded with a lot of facts, a lot of studies on both sides with conflicting information. And the irony is we're never going to get the answer to the conflicting data from the conflicting studies until we get more data. And that's the whole point of this, is if we could, at some point in time down the line, have the opportunity to get the data. 30 states already today have federal exemptions that allow these size trucks on their interstates. And, frankly, there's a lot to prove that these things will not cause the wear and tear or safety problems that have been raised. And with that, I just want to say thank you for your all's patience and tolerance. And there are a few other folks here that would like to take up the balance of our time.
They can do very briefly. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Matt Wells on behalf of Westrock. Again, we're Virginia's largest paper products manufacturer, the largest exporter out of the Port of Virginia by volume. You've heard all the arguments about the benefit to users of the port. You've heard about how these vehicles are already on our roads and the roads of other states. So I will just leave you with this. The port projects that it's going to grow by about 30% between 2017 and 2023. That's 700,000 additional TEUs. I think we all hope that Virginia's economy will continue to grow at that pace as well. So the challenge then is how do we accommodate that growth? A significant portion of it is going to get moved by rail, and it should, but a lot of it is going to be moved by truck and by an industry that NPR reports needs to find 900,000 additional truckers to fill their needs. We think that this is an innovative solution to those challenges. We think that it is certainly one that deserves to be continued to be discussed, which is what the bill in its current posture does. And just to be clear, the bill will not lead to heavier trucks on the roads tomorrow. It won't lead to heavier trucks on the roads in July. It will never lead to heavier trucks on the roads of the Commonwealth until you all decide that it is time to do. So we think that this is a common sense bill. We support it. We hope the committee will act favorably. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Paul Howell with the Virginia Forestry Association. We wholeheartedly support Senator Carrico's bill, and I would also add the Virginia Forest Products Association and Virginia Loggers Association have asked me to express their support as well.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Scott Johnson for International Paper. We've got the Franklin Paper Mill, and we've got facilities in Lynchburg and Richmond. We ask you to support the bill.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jonathan Harding with the Virginia Agribusiness Council. On behalf of the council and our members, including Smithfield Foods, we are also in support of this bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Stan Trediak on behalf of Miller Coors. Also was asked for a Virginia Agribusiness Council and the Virginia Poultry Federation. Just we support the legislation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Benedetti, you here to drum up support?
Mr. Chairman, Matt Benedetti representing the Home Depot, and we support the bill.
He's a drummer. That's why I asked.
Mr. Chairman, Brett Vassey, Virginia Manufacturers Association, on behalf of our 5,000 manufacturers, $43 billion industry, we depend upon this infrastructure. We think this is a good efficiency measure and a good step forward. We support the bill.
Is there anybody here to speak in opposition to the chairman's bill? Uh-oh. You're welcome, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good afternoon. Tim Bentley on behalf of Norfolk Southern, the only Class 1 railroad headquartered and incorporated in the Commonwealth of Virginia, with representing over 3,200 employees here in the Commonwealth, over 1,100 employees down towards Roanoke. Mr. Chairman, I just have to make a couple of points. I will be brief, I promise. Norfolk Southern is certainly concerned about this bill for a lot of reasons. Obviously, we have shared those extensively with you. I've shared those during our testimony last week. Norfolk Southern was not a part of this stakeholder group. There was no, we were not part of this meeting. So I'm a little bit concerned that there was a development of an amendment and all of these concerns were supposedly addressed when we were not a part of that discussion. And that is something that concerns us and likely concerns others who will be testifying. Similarly, I want to make the committee aware that last week in the House Transportation Subcommittee, there was discussion of creating a VDOT study to basically evaluate our infrastructure across the Commonwealth. That's something that the Norfolk Southern CSX and the Railroad Association support, but it was not something that the proponents of this bill chose to support. Instead, they are absolutely fixated on the notion of a study. And I will just like briefly to go through this amendment and say that while I appreciate what may be intended by the amendment language, the language doesn't get you where it might seem that it would. First of all, the starting language still says that VDOT is authorized to enroll or withdraw. So they're authorized to enroll, plain and simple from the language of the bill. Then it says that if the Commissioner of Highways enrolls or withdraws.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Make sure we tell the whole story here, okay? Before that, it says, with the recommendation of the Secretary of Transportation and the approval of the governor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me correct my statement then to say there is no participation by the General Assembly in that process. Thank you for the correction. I certainly don't want to make any misstatements. That there can be an enrollment in the pilot project. Then it says that if that enrollment is either affected or if that enrollment is withdrawn from, that the House and Senate Transportation Committees shall be notified of that decision. But then down in Section 2, or the last line starting at line 16, it says the Commissioner of Highways shall only authorize active participation in such pilot program or project if a general law is enacted. It doesn't say anything about enrollment or withdrawal. It simply says active participation, and members of the committee, active participation is not defined. And so what does that mean? Does that mean heavier trucks? Does it mean data collection? Does it mean data reporting? Does it mean putting Virginia's seal on a letter? We don't know what that means. And so it's a distinction without a difference here in that they've tried, there's an effort here to inject the General Assembly in this process, and we certainly support that attempt, but only if it goes all the way. And it doesn't go all the way here. I would just like to conclude that, you know, this strongly to us seems to be a quest for a soundbite allowing for enrollment in a study. And the railroad supports an active study of our infrastructure by VDOT. And we would just urge the committee to not be confused by this particular language and to reject the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Whit Clement.
Welcome back, Whit.
Thank you. Huntley Williams. I'm here to oppose the bill on behalf of the Virginia Transportation Construction Alliance. Over 300 construction companies, large and small, and the aggregates throughout Virginia. And I will try to be brief. I know y'all have that at your wits' end on this. This substitute may look better, but the underlying problem is still there. It's a backdoor effort to get Congress's attention when previous attempts in Washington by the large trucking interests have fallen flat. In 2015, they attempted to amend the federal FAST Act, Transportation Infrastructure Safety Act. Later, they tried to amend the Federal Appropriations Act, also unsuccessfully. So now they're turning to the states. The more states they can get to say that we'd like to participate in a pilot program. We're not exactly sure what the pilot program is, but we want to go on record saying we would like to enroll. Yes, the governor's approval, Commissioner of Highway, and the Secretary of Commonwealth. Bottom line is, Virginia, we want to be able to say that Virginia wishes to enroll. In a nutshell, that's what this bill is about. But even with those caveats that Senator Cosgrove pointed out and that are in the bill, even the caveat about General Assembly approval for active participation, there's a distinction between enrollment and what that signifies and active participation. It's the enrollment that these interests need in Washington to be able to say that Virginia count us among those interested in a pilot project. That's the simple message that's going to be delivered to Washington, not active participation. We'll deal with that later. You think they're going to get into the details and tell those congressmen if they ever do act? You think they're going to tell them they're subject to the Virginia State Legislature's approval? No, they want Virginia on the list among the states that want to enroll. That's not the way we do business in Virginia. I've never seen the General Assembly ask Congress to let us participate in something that we don't even know anything about. Earlier this afternoon, you passed Senator Ruff's bill, I believe it was Senate Bill 905, that specifically said, you went on record as saying, we don't want to do that until the general, we don't care who is in the administration. Governors, commissioners, secretaries, they come and go. You yourself said several hours ago, General Assembly is going to decide, not the administration. Same here. There's no difference. So what we do know, all the uncertainties on the federal level, we do know that heavy trucks are only paying 80% of their fair share on wear, tear, and maintenance. We do know of a 2016 federal DOT study that recommended no changes in truck weights and limits. We do know from an engineering study that our overall infrastructure in Virginia is C-. And we do know that 25% of our bridges are deficient or obsolete. And we all know about the safety issues of the 80,000-pound trucks on I-81. So, in conclusion, if this bill passes, make no mistake about it, Washington will be told, with the sign-off of the governor, and they may or may not say sign-off of the governor or the secretary and the commissioner, that Virginia wants to be enrolled, whatever enrolled means, and whatever down the road active participation means. Now, there are special permits. DMV allows special permits in many cases for extra heavy equipment. They grant hundreds of them every year from point A to point B at specific times. So I would close it saying that if Congress ever does act, you know you're going to have plenty of time to evaluate and study whether this is a good thing for Virginia. We're a populated state. We've got one of the most congested roads in the country. Let Idaho, Montana, let the Dakotas, let them sign up for entry in the program. And then let us evaluate the facts when we know what the deal is. So for that, I urge you to oppose this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Chris Legault for Nationwide Insurance and the Property Casualty Insurance Association. It's a tough act to follow, and I'll be brief. Nationwide has long been a leader in transportation safety issues, and they're always involved whenever there's a question about crash frequency or severity, because those are the two things that lead to higher insurance costs. I'm a little more sensitive to such things as heavier trucks. I got rear-ended by a tractor trailer about 15 months ago. And got one, thank you so much. But
Okay, let's try to keep on track.
let me try again to get started there. And that was a fully loaded tractor trailer that hit me. And if it had another 11,000 pounds, I might not be standing here. So I'm very concerned personally about heavier trucks at all angles. And we don't want to do anything that's going to exacerbate crash severity. And that's what the heavier trucks would lead to. So I would urge the committee not to act favorably upon this.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Senator Carrico, would you like to wrap this up, please?
Just to clarify a couple of things. We are the first step. We're the ones that are allowing, I know that you heard from the railroad that we're out of the process. We're the ones that are allowing the Secretary of Highway or Commissioner of Highway, Secretary of Transportation, and the governor to approve the study. As far as the infrastructure on this, I don't understand why we're not addressing that, because on line 30 through 32, it says issues related to reasonable access from loading facilities, primary, secondary highways, interstate highways, sufficiency of existing data, determining if routes and bridges should be excluded from this federal project. So we are addressing infrastructure. So with that being a big issue with the railroad, I think knowing that we are addressing the infrastructure, that should bring them into compliance and happy with the bill. As for the stakeholders, VDOT was the one that came to me with issues of how the study would be guided. Members of this committee had some issues as to how it would be approved by the commissioner and how our process would be, so we did the substitute to bring it back before this body once it's approved or withdrawn from. I don't think we're ever going to have the railroads, the insurance, or any of the labor groups in support of this, so I didn't see any reason that that those issues would be addressed, even though we did address some of them that they brought up. And as far as what we recommend scheduling drugs to other agencies. They do the scheduling, they send it back before the General Assembly for our approval the next year, much like what we're doing here. I will tell you, this is a project that everybody's bringing up concerns from the opposition about 91,000 pounds. Currently today, we allow from permitting almost 7,000 permits of trucks ranging from 90,000 to 110,000 pounds on the highway today. And we do it through permits, and we do it with 5 axles. 6 axles gives you more braking power and abilities to stop. So if there is this red flag of concern, there should have been a red flag of concern of the permits that we're currently issuing, which amounts to almost 7,000.
All right, thank you. Are there any comments? Senator Favola.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there a representative from VDOT here? Is Mr. Donahue still here? Oh, there's another representative. On lines 28, and I guess it goes through 34, it says that the department may consult relevant stakeholders and may review the fee structure for qualifying tractor trucks, the axle spacing, issues related to reasonable access, et cetera, et cetera. My question is on the stakeholders. Is it your expectation that you're going to bring in the stakeholders who we have heard from who are anxious and outright opposed to this legislation?
Mr. Chair, Joanne Maxwell from VDOT. Absolutely. Our intention would be to include anybody and everybody that has expressed issues, concerns, support, opposition, with regard to this legislation and this concept and this potential pilot. That is one of the things we feel like we're going to need to do with regard to this effort in the second enactment clause.
Follow-up question, Mr. Chairman?
Senator Favola.
So it's my understanding that the department would convene the work group after passage of this bill, sort of prior to our participation in the federal pilot, and you would work out issues that you would want data collected on. And is that fair?
Mr. Chair, that is accurate. We basically see the second enactment clause as basically helping us to queue up the potential, all of the various issues we would need to figure out before we decided whether or not to participate or to enroll.
Thank you.
I finally, Mr. Chairman, one brief comment. I will just say that this has come a long way in giving me more comfort. I did not vote for this bill the first time we heard it last time, so.
All right, thank
And
you.
we
Senator
took your
McClellan.
concerns.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator McClellan's up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't see anyone from the Trucking Association speak, but I had a meeting with several truckers in my district who I've learned more about trucks in the past 6 months than I ever thought I would learn. To be clear, you're right, with some of the higher axles and higher weights, and I did mention at the last meeting a 7-axle truck, but it turned out that was a dump truck. What I learned from my truckers is that tractor trailers typically are 5 axles. Most of them are 5 axles, and I believe the flatbeds that carry lumber are also 5 axles. And what they're concerned about is exactly what I expressed the last time, that if the federal government passes a pilot, and my understanding is there's not a single live bill right now that includes a pilot, and the last time there was one, it was overwhelmingly defeated. So I'd be surprised if anything passed in 2018. But if something passed in 2018, and if we participated, their concern is that someone is going to buy the 6-axle trucks, but they can't. And their concern is they're going to be put at a competitive disadvantage and basically be forced, you either buy a new truck or you lose the business. And I very much wanted to get to yes, because some of the folks that are supporting this bill are employers in my district. But if we don't participate in the federal pilot, they won't be hurt as bad as my truckers feel that they will be if we do. And for that reason, while I appreciate the extra effort that you all took on behalf of my truckers, I can't support the bill.
Well, let me just clarify something. It is not the truck. They don't. The truck itself, it pulls the trailer. The trailer is what would have the extra axle. Number 2, trailers can be retrofitted with another axle. They don't have to even buy the new trailer. They just have to buy the other axle retrofitted. So just want to clarify, it's not the truck.
Fair enough.
It's the trailer.
Fair enough.
And it can be retrofitted, and it doesn't require a purchase. They can retrofit it with the axle. But that, beside the point, doesn't require them to do it. Don't think we'll ever do away with 80,000-pound trucks. I just think this is just an option for companies that have fleets that do a lot of hauling.
Okay, Senator Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've really gone back and forth on this bill, and I'm sure frustrated a lot of people along the way. But you know, I am planning on supporting the option that we have on the table today. But I am going to express my concerns, and it has to do with this, which is basically a list of, in Amelia and Chesterfield, some of the roads that have issues that some of our emergency rescue, our fire trucks can't go over currently. We have a crumbling infrastructure. We're continuing to make exceptions for heavy trucks. I'm concerned about that. I mean, I have 4 drivers right now. I always look at things from a mom perspective, and I know y'all get tired of me doing that, but I can't help it. you know, we need to make sure that, I mean, I'm hoping this gives us enough time, maybe a year or so, that hopefully the federal administration, who I know is concerned about our infrastructure and our roads, maybe they actually move us in the right direction, and then this is good. I don't know where I'm going to be on this a year from now, but I think I would like to exercise the right to have that option. And so today, while I have reservations, I am going to support this.
You're in luck, because on line 30, I addressed.
Senator Carrico.
You're in luck. On line 30, I addressed the Chase kids because it says reasonable access to primary and secondary highways. So they won't be able to operate on them if it's not a suitable highway.
Okay, Senator Edwards.
To VDOT, question, I'm assuming VDOT is not asking for the bill.
No.
Is that right? Okay. And the second question I have to anybody, the Senator, you mentioned earlier that already special permits can be granted to over 91,000 pound trucks, right?
Mm-hmm. We do that.
Yeah. And wouldn't you agree that what we really need to do is fix up the infrastructure throughout the Commonwealth?
I would agree that we need to make this uniform and pass this bill so that we can get into the study of a 91,000 truck that.
Mr. Chairman, wouldn't you agree that before we even think about bigger trucks, we need to improve our infrastructure?
I would agree that our infrastructure will always need work, no matter what we do here. But I don't think that this method in which I don't know of anyone on here that's dealt with overweight trucks more than I have. I understand the tandem loads and the use of those trucks and the spans on the bridges that they can cross and the damages that they can do. However, if they operate within the perimeters in which they're allowed through that permitting process, it is something that they can do. And we already do that, Senator Edwards, in Southwest Virginia. It's called a severance tax, where we allow sand, gravel, coal, and asphalt trucks to operate on the highways at 110,000 pounds, and they pay an additional severance tax in order to work on the infrastructure. So we already do that in some sense.
So, Mr. Chairman, so if that's the case, why do we need the bill?
Okay.
We need the bill because 110,000 pounds and 90,000 and 94,000 on milk trucks, because milk is a containerized, you can't shift the weight as easily, it moves. 91,000 pounds allows us more braking power, more tandem space, and more ability to safely load that truck that we don't have today.
Okay, all right, I think we've beat this horse about as much as we're going to beat it. Just I'm going to take prerogative since I get to be the chair right now. I want to thank Senator McClellan. I believe it was Senator McClellan and some of the folks down the other end that actually allowed us to bring this back, and I do appreciate that for some further discussion. So is there a motion on the bill?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to report the bill. All right, please open the roll. All in favor, vote aye. Vote opposed, no. All right. Wow. Can you close the, strike the vote, and let's try this again. All right. Let's open the roll. Opposed, yes. All right. Okay. Are we good? Yes, we got it. Okay. I close the roll, please.
Let's close the thing up.
Ain't technology grand.
6 ayes, 7 nays. Nope.
Nope.
7 ayes.
No, it's
7 ayes, 6 nays.
All right, the bill's reported 7 ayes and 6 nays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is Senator Stewart still here?
I've got his.
You've got his? All right, do you want to go ahead and do it?
Senate Bill 207, after speaking to the patron and understanding what the bill does, and he has asked that we carry over Senate Bill 207 until 2019.
All right, is there a motion? Been moved and seconded that we carry over Senate Bill 207 to 2019. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Do we have to vote on that? It's unanimous? Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, that should complete our calendar. We're done with all Senate bills. Congratulations, and thank you for your hard work, and we'll start working on the House bills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good job, Bill.